SN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
We're back on the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz, and it's getting very close to that time of year. No, I'm not talking about Memorial Day. I'm talking about Freedom Fest, the annual libertarian get-together that takes place in July in Las Vegas. And the founder of that event, Mark Skousen, is with us now. You know him well. He's PhD, editor of Forecast and Strategy, which you know is nationally known investment report. He's an economist, professor, and author of more than 20 books, which I find impressive. I've only done 4, and that's a monumental undertaking. Hey, Mark, welcome back.
Glad to be with you, and look forward to talking about Freedom Fest or whatever else you want to talk about.
Yeah, well, you can't help but when you talk about Freedom Fest, talking about what's going on in the world here, the loss of freedom, and of course, the theme of Freedom Fest this year is basically his Big Brother here, and Big Brother has been kind of emerging for a number of years, hasn't he?
Well, and in fact, we just got a report. We have a conference in the Bahamas every year in February as well, and I used to live in the Bahamas, and I just read where the NSA has been doing for some time total surveillance, where they record and listen in every cell phone conversation in the Bahamas. I mean, here's a democracy. There's no terrorist threat whatsoever. Maybe they're going after the drug dealers. Who knows? But can you imagine listening in and at least have the capability of targeting any single telephone call when you live in the Bahamas? What an insult to the Constitution and everything that we stand for, because if you don't have privacy, which is part of the Fourth Amendment, you really don't have liberty, because if somebody is looking over your shoulder the whole time, then where's the freedom? Where's the freedom of choice? Because you're going to second guess, well, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to do that? What if someone's watching me?
It's insane, because the Bahamas in the 80s, it was a drug smuggling center, money laundering center. But the U.S. pressured the Bahamas to stop that, and they did. And all the banks now have Know Your Customer, so that's done. The U.S. has access to banking records of all the banks in the Bahamas. Drug smuggling has stopped, and now there's ostensibly no reason to be doing this. So what is the purpose of the U.S. tapping all of the cell phones in the Bahamas? Why are they doing it?
Yeah, and I think it's just because they have that capability.
Because they
like
can.
The engineer's attitude. Let's go to the moon because we can do it. Let's try it. Doesn't matter how much it costs. Doesn't matter whether it's a waste of money or so on. That's what we're going to do. I think there's a lot of government agents that have that attitude, that I can listen in to any conversation. Who are you to tell me no? What's this Constitution, this piece of paper? It really is a sad commentary. And, of course, the whole recording, I mean, as bad as this stuff is regarding the Sterling guy and the NBA, as Bill Maher says, at what point does every conversation you think twice about what you say to make sure you're saying something politically correct, for fear that maybe somebody is recording you, including the government, and they can use that against you, especially if you're a high-profile person.
Yeah, and there was that decision in New York, I think it was by Judge Rhodes, but I could be incorrect on that, where he said that taking recording of metadata of every cell phone conversation in the U.S. is a wholesale violation of the Fourth Amendment, and the government couldn't point to one case where it stopped or avoided a terrorist attack. Right?
Yeah.
Not one case.
Yeah.
It was in that decision. The government couldn't point to one case, and they didn't even attempt to, and they didn't have to spell out the case in public. They could have pointed to the case in camera, in private to the judge, and yet they didn't do it. So therefore, if it's not preventing terrorist attacks, why is it being done?
And it's being done in the name of the Patriot Act. It's being done in the name of of going after terrorism in general, but it reminds me of the RICO statutes that were originally passed in the 70s to go after crime, the mafia, and then is used for everything under the sun, whether it's drug dealing or tax evasion or a violation of some government regulation or rule. And now we have these SWAT tunes. We have Radley Balco, who's written this book called The Rise of the Warrior Cop, and he's a real interesting investigative reporter who demonstrates that you have this incredible amount of power in these local police forces now. Every small town has a SWAT team just itching to use their new technical, their new weapons and so forth. And it's not being used to just for drug busts, but for other small violations. And, you know, it's got to be a terrorist. Talk about local terrorism, to have your own government, your own police, pointing guns at you and yelling at you. And I mean, it's just very scary, the kind of things that are going on. And of course, it's now extended to the TSA and the IRS. And there's a saying that I like to use that I heard a few years ago. Today, more and more, everything is either being prohibited or mandated. And so once you violate one of these rules, then you get into trouble. A lot of them are just artificial. And we were talking about Dinesh D'Souza, who's one of our keynote speakers, who has come under attack because he violated one of these campaign laws of how much you can give to any one candidate. That's a clear violation of your right of expression. Even corporations don't have any limits anymore on how much money they can give to candidates. Why is there a $10,000 limit to individuals? And you have to engage in these kind of secretive, here, you know, behind you're pulling out your coat and saying, here's $10,000 for your campaign, but don't tell anybody because it's a violation of the rules because I've already given you the maximum. Can you imagine creating a black market in campaign activities?
It's downright disheartening as an American to see what's happening here. And yet most people just think, the government knows best, right?
Well, unless it happens to them, and more it's happening to them. And we do have a really good media now that highlights these stories, and it's not just on Fox News, but everywhere they're highlighting these government abuses, including 60 Minutes. So this is always very good, and I'm happy to report that in Dinesh D'Souza's case that he is coming to Freedom Fest. He's doing a luncheon. He's on our mock trial as one of the attorneys. He's showing his film, America. I'll have his book there. He's showing the film. We're doing that Friday night on 7/11, July 11th. And so people need to come together. We've created this Freedom Fest conference as a way for libertarians and freedom lovers from all around the world and free thinkers and intellectuals to come together once a year, and there is strength in numbers. And you know, the quotes we get from people, it's just astonishing. You've been there, so you know how the buzz, the excitement that you feel in that exhibit hall when you walk in there and see all of these freedom organizations gathering together, and the buzz and the talk. I mean, it's quite an experience. It's life-changing for people.
Yeah, I remember the first time I walked in there and I felt like, hey, I'm coming home. There's all these people here. I'm not alone anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And you often feel like that, especially in New York.
Oh, yeah. So finally, I just had enough of New York. People say, well, why'd you move to Florida? You know, is it the weather? And yeah, I mean, the weather's nice, especially after the winter that you guys had up in New York this year. But really, the weather is kind of the least of it. Just tired of all the garbage that you have to go through just to run a business in New York. And it feels like you've got a target on your back. If you want to do anything in New York, there's always an army of bureaucrats nipping at your heels, always looking for something you've done wrong, always looking to let the fist come down on you, you know?
Yeah, and it's unfortunately on a federal level. It's not just the state level. Yes, the New York City and the state of New York, but there's the federal level, and they're everywhere. They're even in Florida, so it's hard to escape them.
Oh, yeah. So, you know, I'm sure you followed with great interest the travails of Cliven Bundy, what he was going through in Harry Reid's state, and the state you're holding Freedom Fest, speaking of the feds, right?
Yeah, for sure. And And I haven't really followed the case that closely in terms of everything that's going on, but because there's so much going on around the world. But this is, if there's some rule or some regulation that is in clear violation of your conscience or ethical foundations or just right and wrong, you often come up against the feds, and they can be brutal in abusing their power. The Founding Fathers warned against this kind of thing.
Yes, they did. And more on that when we return on the Financial Survival Network.
FSN Radio.
People have been using gold and silver to protect their wealth for thousands of years. Shouldn't you? That's why I go to Owings Metals. Their service is outstanding, and you can buy with complete confidence. Order today, and you'll have your metal in your hands in 10 days or less. They help take the guesswork out of the buying process, and you'll buy at the lowest possible prices. Call them today at 855-604-6343, 855-604-6343, or find them on the web at owingsmetals.com and tell them Kerry sent you.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
We're back on the Financial Survival Network. We're speaking with Mark Skousen, founder of Freedom Fest, the world's largest gathering of free minds. And, Mark, you think about the militarization of the local police. You think about no-knock drug raids, and then you see things happen like in Colorado, Washington State, where they decriminalize or actually legalize recreational use of marijuana, which is a clear nullification of federal law. And maybe it's not the best challenge of federal law, but is that furthering the libertarian cause, do you think?
Absolutely. This is a great breakthrough that the states are passing laws that are in clear violation of the federal law, and the feds are simply allowing it to take place, at least generally. There are probably some exceptions. I keep reading stories about how the feds come in and arrest people and stuff like that. But I think in general, from what I've seen, it is a clear example, and I think more examples will come along that say, this will empower states to start pushing laws that are in clear violation of federal law, and we'll see where it leads. So I'm pleased to see that, and we always have the, Rob Cambian, others coming to Freedom Fest and talking about these kinds of issues. I think it's really an important step in the right direction.
Well, here's the thing. You and me, we're libertarians. There's libertarians of every stripe out there, anarcho-libertarians and all that. But, you've often said it's like herding cats. But are we winning this battle, or are we really just fooling ourselves and we really don't have a chance?
Well, no, I'm actually quite optimistic, and it's not just the fact that the stock market is at an all-time high. It's kind of symbolizing that we do have the chance to solve these problems. But I will tell you this is the first Freedom Fest that we've had with no politicians. No politicians are showing up this year. Even Rand Paul is not coming. He didn't really give a reason, but he's not coming. Maybe it's because he's running for president now or something, and what have you. But we're focusing on private solutions to world problems. We've decided we're going to have a conference where we focus on what you can do as a private citizen without running to Congress to change the tax laws, to change the regulations, or anything like that. Just see what you can do on your own without running to government. So we have Harris Rosen, for example, who's the CEO and founder of Rosen Resorts and Hotels, which has the highest profit margins in Central Florida, ahead of Disney or Universal. And he has his own war on poverty. He has his own healthcare system that's better than Obamacare. He's just a phenomenal individual as a private citizen doing what he thinks right for his people, for his employees, for his local community, for his country. and he's working within the confines of the rules that have been set by government, but he's taken his own private initiative. And John Mackey's the same way. He's going to give a talk on the Whole Foods Wellness Program. He always gets a standing room only crowd. We're going to put him in the celebrity ballroom this time, and he's going to talk about what he's doing at Whole Foods to make people healthier and live longer lives. Forget the government. Forget depending on the government for anything, whether it's to even reduce your taxes and that sort of thing. It always requires you to push and vote and get all of these people and so forth. And we're just going to focus on things you can do now without worrying about the government, getting the government permission, and you just do it. And this is the truth. This is the new libertarian approach. Instead of waiting for the government to solve or make the war on poverty worse, we take a private initiative. So like Harris Rosen, in his case, there he has this local community in Central Florida called Tangelo Park. You may have heard of it, and it's a minority park, and it's drug-infested, it's crime-infested, very low high school graduation level, all of the problems that are associated with these poor areas in the United States. And he came in, he joined up, and he said, listen, every student who graduates from high school, he did this on his own, every student who graduates from high school in Tangelo Park will get a 4-year fully paid for college degree program as long as they stay inside Florida. So it can be at the University of Florida or a local school or what have you. I'll pay the tuition. And he's done this, and he did this on his own. High school graduation level has skyrocketed. The crime level has dropped dramatically. I mean, he's made a difference himself without working through government, without saying, oh, the government should do this or do that. He's done it himself. And how could he do this? Because he runs a very tight ship with his resorts. He's highly profitable, and he has the money to offer this service. So this is a great story of a single person who, Ben Franklin said it best. He said it's incredible the quantity of good a single man can do in a country if he makes a business out of it, really focuses on it. And it's really funny, though, I should tell you, he showed me, when I met Harris Rosen, he showed me pictures of him with Oprah, him with President Obama. They've all come down, they've looked at this program, and then they walk away, and they don't do anything on their own to make a difference. They're just patting him on the back saying, oh, good job, thank you very much.
Photo op.
We have a publicity stunt here. And he's furious about their attitude that they don't take private initiative to solve any of these problems. They're just out for themselves, or who knows what they're trying to do.
Amazing. So one man with courage really is a majority, huh?
Exactly. And so Steve Forbes is going to interview him, and I'll be on this panel as well at Freedom Fest on Friday morning. We're also going to have the think tanks. We all give money to these nonprofit think tanks. Are they making any difference? So we're going to have a panel that has all of the presidents of the think tanks. David Knott of Reason. We're going to have John Allison of Cato. We're going to have Becky Dunlap representing Senator Jim DeMint. Declined to come. But Becky Dunlap, who's been around a long time, is going to cover the Heritage Foundation. We have Grover Norquist, the Americans for Tax Reform. I mean, we have a high-powered panel here. People inside the Beltway do free market think tanks make a difference? You and I give money to these people. Are they making a difference? And they're going to be put on the line. Have you made a difference in what you're doing in educating and the public and achieving this libertarian goal that we're talking about? And we're going to have a state think tank that does the same thing, run by Joe Lehman of the Mackinac Center, which is very successful in Michigan of getting a right-to-work law passed there. So there are some success stories, and we want to focus on it and not just bury our heads in the sand saying, oh, we can't do anything about it.
Yeah. So as an individual, what do you think you can do here, Mark, as an individual to start making a difference?
Well, for example, my wife and I, through our church, are involved with a lot of welfare cases and women out of wedlock, children, and that sort of thing in Yonkers in New York. And so, like my wife says, she talks to people. She says, listen, your number one goal is to get out of Yonkers. And she's gotten a couple of people to move. There's one gal who was on welfare, moved to California, of all places, and is now turned her life around, has a decent job, getting an education for out-of-wedlock children and all that sort of thing. It was just a brilliant move on her part. So there are things you can do, but it takes a personal requirement. You know, when Hurricane Sandy came through, I told this example at last year's Freedom Fest, where Hurricane Sandy came through, and we could have depended on the government and all that sort of thing. We could have sent a check in to help people out or whatever. We volunteered. We went down there and actually cleaned out basements and cleaned out debris, and people love, I tell you, the personal touch made a big difference. And the only thing the government would do out at these places was pick up the trash on the sidewalks. They would do nothing else, and some of these people were desperate, so we were glad to volunteer and help out. And that's what America is all about, is volunteer instead of paying taxes and sending checks in and stuff. We volunteer, we participate, we try to help out as much as we can. So that's the ultimate, I think, in individualism that we all advocate. And I'm just delighted for everybody to come together at Freedom Fest once a year to achieve this kind of a sense, learning about others. And let me give you another example. At Freedom Fest, we have this fellow, Marty Cummings, who comes every year, and he talks about not just setting up a foundation, but setting up a foundation that is job creating. I mean, imagine what is the biggest problem facing this country is new jobs. And imagine if you set up a foundation that is specifically geared to produce goods and services that people really need, where you're going to have to hire people and that sort of thing, rather than just building a foundation that invests in the stock market. See what I mean? There's a big difference. Mm-hmm. So if you can set up companies that are actually hiring people and creating Peter Drucker said it best. He says, it is business. It's not government. It's not the church and so on. It is business. That's where you spend most of your time, and that's where we want to create the best social organization in the world is business.
Hey, that's a great point. And I think Carlos Slim said it best when he was talking about Bill Gates and Warren Buffett and their foundation. And he said, hey, I run businesses that employ people, and when they expand, they employ more people, whereas opposed to Gates and Buffett's foundation, what effect, who does more good? It's really the question. Mark, you got some time to keep talking?
Well, I have another engagement soon, but what?
Another 10 minutes, because I just wanted to talk about this idea of individual empowerment, and something that Milton Friedman said, that when the government undertakes altruism, it actually forces out private individuals and private charity, because people say, well, the government's taking care of it. Why should I bother? Right?
Yeah.
Isn't that effectively what happens? Well, the government's sending out checks to needy families. They're sending out EBT cards, food stamps. What do I need to bother for?
Well, and you make a very good point, and I will use an example from a documentary that we're showing at the Anthem Film Festival. As you know, at Freedom Fest, we have this 3-day film festival. I don't know if you've attended any of the films or not, but they are terrific, first-rate libertarian films, narratives, and documentaries. And this year we have one called Poverty, and it is that exact story. It talks about in Haiti, where the government sent in all of this free rice to feed these people in Haiti. And as a result, hundreds of farmers were put out of work who produced rice in Haiti for the local poor and so forth. And so this is a very classic example of what Adam Smith called the unintended consequences of government intervention with these kinds of situations. There's nothing wrong with some temporary help, but when you start feeding people permanently with this kind of a foreign aid, it's very damaging to the local economy.
That is a great point. And I have a very close friend who at 11 years old became an orphan. And she's very sympathetic to the plight of the poor and the needy and said, well, what about people? Who's going to take care of them? Who's going to help these people? And I said, you are the exception. You're the person who needed the help. But the fact is, when the government gets involved giving this stuff out, you get all sorts of fraud. They're not in a position to pick out the real needy from the fake needy. And just look at what's happening now with the disability program. 11 million people collecting disability, population the size of Cuba is on disability. How many of those people are really disabled, Mark, right? Yeah, no, for sure. It's out of control, right? I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's really totally out of control, and this isn't the end of it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And therefore, the private sector, private solutions are clearly superior to the government stepping in, not to mention the corruption. I mean, it's mind-boggling, and there's really no end in sight to it. So,
yeah, that seems to be the case.
So on that note, thanks so much for being on, Mark. Just give us the website where we find Freedom Fest, where you can register, and hotels and all that good stuff.
freedomfest.com is the website, and our room block at Planet Hollywood, we do have a separate phone number to call on that, and people should move rather quickly, because that's the first thing that fills up is our you want to be right there at Planet Hollywood Hotel, and we have the special room block, $109 a night. So I encourage people to register today and sign up for the luncheons. We have our anarchy. We're going to do an anarchy debate again this year for one of our luncheons. So
great.
That's going to be exciting with Jeffrey Tucker and Doug Casey representing the anarchy side. And we have Brigadier General Michael Meese, Ed Meese's son, coming to join us on the case for limited government and defending our country and all that sort of thing. So it's the first time we've really had a military person, although he is retired, so he can speak his mind, which would be good. Oh,
and we need the dates, too. Don't forget the dates.
Oh, yes. July 9th through the 12th, starts Wednesday. And by the way, we are having a sneak preview of Atlas Shrugged 3, the grand finale of the trilogy of Ayn Rand's novel, on film. And we're having a sneak preview 3 months before it comes public. So that's going to be on Wednesday. So you want to arrive early enough for our Wednesday sneak preview and our opening ceremonies with Steve Forbes and Michael Medved and others, and pre-conferences. It's just going to be great fun. So we will see you there July 9th through the 12th at Planet Hollywood in Vegas.
I will see you there, Mark. Thanks so much for being on. And
all right, take care.
Link will be found on financialsurvivalnetwork.com. We'll see you there, Mark.
All right, bye-bye.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.